Anbakè's love story. Music that transforms history is a promise whispered in chords. A melody that learns to bend the stubborn edges of time towards something softer, warmer, and unexpectedly durable. In the market of small miracles. She is more a note than a name. A violin bow skimming the air between stalls. A pocket full of tunes that refuse to stay quiet. The city hums like a living instrument, and Anbakè knows a secret. Every ordinary day holds a chorus waiting to be heard. On a rain-slick afternoon, she follows a stray thread of sound that refuses to stay with the crowd. A busker's whistle, a distant piano, the sigh of a train. Her own fingers stumble onto a rhythm that feels older, like a memory that learned to speak again. The tune slides into the stone archways and slips through a crack in a garden wall, where an old violin case sits like a quiet invitation. Anbakè opens it and finds inside not dust but a single sheet of parchment, edged in sunlight and stained with a gentle seawater blue. It bears a single line in a handwriting she cannot place. A time-worn melody whose vowels glitter with possibility. She takes the case home, and every room she steps into seems to lean closer, listening. In the glow of the evening lamp, she runs her fingers along the spine of the manuscript. A map that doesn't show roads but possibilities. The melody has no name yet, but it carries a tenderness that makes the room feel like a harbor after a long voyage. She plays the tentative opening notes on a battered violin her mother once carried to 100 crammed rooms, and the air shifts. The sound is not merely hers, it travels through walls, down stairwells, into kitchens where bread is rising, into quiet bedrooms where sleep remembers to listen. The first person who speaks back is a stranger who appears in the glass of her window. A man standing at the edge of the frame in a coat that seems to shimmer with different time zones. His name is Kai. And he plays the same melody with a tenderness that matches hers, but with a history in his eyes that reads like 100 winters and springs. They don't shake hands at first. They listen. They breathe. They trade a few notes, half questions, half answers, until the song between them starts to feel less like contest and more like a shared breath. In the days that follow, they meet in the soft hush between storefronts. Behind a bakery whose ovens glow like small sun, they practice the peace at dusk. When pigeons settle in polite architecture and the city begins to unzip the day's tension. Kai brings stories that belong to another era. Of dancers who learned to float on fear. And of a city that learned to survive through chorus and chorus and chorus. Anbakè brings memories that belong to her grandmother's old radio. To a cousin who vanished into the sea with a melody clutched in his fist. To her own stubborn faith that love can arrive in a melody as unassuming as a streetlight turning on. The music is not merely sound, it is an invitation to reconsider what history means to a heart. As they perform, people begin to listen not just with ears but with trembles of memory. A quarrel between neighbors dissolves into laughter when a grandmother hums along in a kitchen. And a shy barista dares to dream aloud about pursuing a life written in chords rather than chalk. The melody stitches strangers into a single thread. A shared moment that survives the day's weather and the night's hunger. And with each rehearsal, Anbakè feels something she has believed was possible only in fairy tales. A love that grows in the light of ordinary acts. The unfolding romance is not loud or flashy, it is earned in small acts of care, a cup of tea shared after a long practice. A late-night walk through a rain-soaked park where the air tastes of lemon and rain and possibility. Kai tells her that history does not always demolish what we hold dear. Sometimes it gently lends new textures to what we already carry. He speaks of a city's memory as a chorus that repeats in different keys until someone daringly blends them into something new. Anbakè learns to trust his tempo, to follow the way he moves toward the center of a room, where light gathers and stays. The project gains momentum when a municipal conservatory announces a centennial concert celebrating the city's overlooked musicians. It could be a night when history sits in the audience, listening, and perhaps finally forgives the present for its noisy impatience. They decide to stage a performance that fuses the old parchment melody with living voices: the street choir, the violin, the piano, and Anbakè's voice that carries a quiet courage. But the road is not always smooth. The city council debates funding. Rumors swirl about a rival project that could erase the memory they're trying to resurrect. And the clock ticks louder than any metronome. They must prove the power of their music is not a momentary spark but a long flame that can hold against the wind. To keep faith with the mother melody, Anbakè revisits the parchment's geography. A seaside alley where a sailor once taught a child to whistle. A church with bells that remember a festival nobody speaks of anymore. A marketplace where a dancer learned to count time by the click of a merchant's door. Kai travels with her through these places, gathering fragments of stories, each a tiny ember that the music can cradle. They realize the narrative of history is rarely linear. It braids through birthdays and funerals, graduations and farewells, the ordinary and the magical. Their love becomes a counter-rhythm to cynicism. A promise that even in the gray of routine, a fresh color can be painted by two hands and a shared song. In the weeks before the concert, a storm sweeps across the city, rattling windows and testing resolve. The rehearsal space floods, paperwork vanishes, and a beloved instrument breaks. But they hold on. They repair the violin with patient care. They photograph memories to remind themselves what they're fighting for. And they practice in a small sunlit room where dust motes float like tiny constellations. The more they lean on each other, the more their voices harmonize. And the audience begins to glimpse what they have learned. That love's true music is not the fireworks of a new romance but the quiet resilience that persists when everything around them wants to quiet down. On opening night, the hall glows with a warmth that feels almost sacred. The parchment melody returns. And this time it is joined by contemporary verses that tell stories of a present that still aches and yet chooses to hope. Anbakè's voice softens into a breath that carries a lifetime of listening. Kai's violin answers with a rhythm that speaks of fidelity, endurance, and tenderness. The audience is not merely watching a performance. They are allowed to wake up inside their own memories, to see the way love can endure without becoming stubborn or soft. To witness a history that does not erase the ache but transforms it into something more bearable, more beautiful. As the final chords hang in the air, the room feels like a harbor after a long voyage. People lean forward, catching the last gleam of the music before it settles into the silence that follows. Anbakè and Kai stand side by side, not as triumphal conquerors but as partners who have learned to dance with time, to coax history into a gentler shape, to give a future a melody it can keep in its pocket for days when the world seems heavy. The piece ends with a single, sparkling echo, the parchment melody returning to the stage as if it had never left, a gentle reminder that love, when tended with patience and faith, can transform history and give birth to a new kind of happiness. And in the hush that follows, Anbakè speaks softly to the audience and to the memory of any heart that has waited a lifetime for the sound that could make it whole. Sometimes the miracle is not a dramatic kiss or declaration, but the daily choice to keep listening, to keep playing, to keep believing. If you have ever measured your days by the weight of a longing, this is for you. A story that says perseverance can nurture a love that grows deep roots, a love that is patient, generous, and hopeful. A love story where music is the weather. History is a patient companion. And two people learn to trust the sound of each other's hearts as the true conductor of their shared future. So when you leave this tale behind, carry it with you like a melody tucked in your pocket. A reminder that romance can arrive in ordinary hours, wearing ordinary clothes, and still alter the course of history. Anbakè's journey proves that the heart can redraw the map, that songs can stitch decades together, and that love's most lasting transformations happen not with a single thunderclap but with countless small, brave moments that keep returning like a chorus you cannot forget. And if you ever doubt that the world can be generous to lovers who listen, listen again. The music will guide you home. The story of Anbakè is a lighthouse for those who still believe in happy endings earned through patience, courage, and the stubborn grace of two souls who chose to stay when the city asked them to hurry, to forget, to settle. They did not forget. They kept listening. They rewrote a few pages of history with the soft, unbreakable line of their